All right. Welcome back. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. Season 2.
Season 2.
Season 2 of the Dudecast.
Here we go.
Exciting because today we found out that iTunes finally accepted us as a legitimate podcast.
Yeah. I mean that was an interesting thing. I mean, in my experience with the other show, we were all, we started at a time where they didn't have these big amalgamation podcasting where you submit it to one and they submit it to everybody you. We had to go out there and hustle. I mean, our biggest thing was getting on Spotify.
Right.
Apple was kind of the mainstay, and then getting on Spotify, because Spotify at the time that we started way back when didn't even take podcasts. Okay. And then when they started doing podcasts, they were a very select few, and then they started accepting applications, and then they were very choosy about it. And,
right.
It took us a while, and now I think they just take everybody.
They probably do. And it's funny because I feel like iTunes went the opposite way.
Right.
Where they started because they wanted to have market share, which they do. I think it's something
absolutely.
65% of all podcasts are listened through iTunes. But they started out just like anybody and everybody. You want a podcast? Sure. Send us your RSS feed. We'll include it, and away you go. And now it's like your titling and your descriptors have to be within a certain thing. You can't use certain words in your title or in your description. You can't use like episode markers in your title or your description. Yeah. And all sorts of things, obviously, like, and then I think it's got more to do with U.S. politics than anything else, but like trigger words. So like if you use safe spaces or Antifa or anything like that, like forget it, your podcast is not getting approved.
Wow.
And what I found out, this is crazy. So nothing against Anchor, although maybe a little against Anchor. I mean, I don't want to bite the hand that potentially might feed, but come on, guys, get your shit together. Their podcast support crew is all like work at home agents, and they just do everything through email, and they really don't know anything. You say, hey, I've had this issue getting my podcast on iTunes, and they're like, yeah, iTunes is pretty difficult.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well,
that's helpful.
You're the host. Can you figure something out for us? Oh, well, it looks like maybe your tags and markers are a little bit funny, so try to adjust them with more specific detail and avoid these words. Yeah. They sent me like a big list. And so I went through it, and everything was okay, and it looked like it was all good, and it just kept getting rejected and rejected and rejected, and Apple kept saying, you're being rejected for test content. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I've got the proper tags, I've got proper titling, our audio is very clearly us talking about stuff like a podcast should be.
Yeah.
Except with the beginning where we were like, are we on? Are we live? Like, what? And I was thinking, oh, maybe it's triggering like the first 30 seconds.
Maybe somebody was listening to the first 30 seconds of the...
Something like that and going, oh, well, this isn't a real podcast, but it was. So Anchor eventually kind of stopped emailing me back at all. I opened a new ticket, and or I think maybe a third ticket, and finally somebody got back to me and said, yeah, we don't know what's going on. Everything looks good on our end. Try and get in touch with Apple, and maybe they'll give you some answers. And I'm like, okay, so pass the buck, right? Yeah. So I email Apple, and it's a form email immediately. Like, please avoid these things. Like, basically the same kind of schlock that Anchor was telling me. And I'm like, oh, God, that doesn't make any sense. But the second email I got from them was like, please try these things. And if it doesn't work, email me back, like reply to this email. Thanks, Diona. So like I was actually a person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy crap. So I emailed them back like, listen, I went through this. It looks like everything's fine. And I'm not sure if it's a he or a she, but anyway, thank you, Diona, for finally helping. And they finally got back and said, oh, well, it looks like this tag, and it was in the descriptor of the main podcast page, which was saying cover art provided by blah, blah, blah. And then there's a hyperlink to the like redirect site to that artist's website. They're like, this is a tag that's not allowed. It's something metadata, blah, blah, blah. Remove it and you should be good. We'll resubmit. And I'm like, why has nobody said anything about this before? Weird. Anyway, did it, emailed back. Yep, you're good to go.
Somebody probably just didn't know.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know, but that's what it turned out to be. So.
And it's interesting. I mean, I guess that's the thing with online and, rapid growth in an industry is that when things change, that people don't necessarily know what's going on. And I mean,
yeah,
I've been podcasting for, a good 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know everything, and I'll be the first to admit that. And a lot of it was trial and error, especially back in the day, because you would go, "How do I do this?" and there would be nothing. Like, how to submit to Spotify? And people would be like, "Well, it just doesn't happen." It's like, well, it does happen. I need to know how. You know, and muddled my way through it. But I guess Anchor, maybe because they are a free.
Well, and that's
amalgamator
part of it too.
Is that and that they're utilizing people who are probably donating their time for free. Is that at the end of the day,
could be. I didn't get really a specific answer whether they were actually employees or if it was like free community curators or something like that.
Right.
But that would make sense if it is like a community based help feedback site or something.
Again,
like that,
it goes back to the adage: you get what you pay for.
Well, exactly.
I think in all fairness, Anchor's done a good job. I like sort of the landing page for it.
Yeah,
I looked at it for Lloyd and JD, and then I got a little paranoid when I started looking at stuff, and I'm like, if it's going to start moving stuff around, I don't want to mess with what you've already built,
right?
Right, because we have a good chunk of like I think we got 3,100 and some subscribers this last month.
Wow,
which was a huge spike for us again.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, I don't want to mess with something that's working, right?
Yeah, no, exactly,
and completely off the rail.
And that could be it, because if you end up moving everything over from your original host to a new host, essentially the RSS gets a redirect tag added to it.
Yeah,
and again, from this experience, it seems like Apple will then deny it and say, nope, this isn't good. It's not validating anymore. Yeah. And suddenly now your 4,000 subscribers are down to whatever. Yeah. Not really worth it, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But anyway, pretty wild. That was a bit of a tangent, but
yeah.
So I was recently, I'm part of a men's group, kind of like an online community of guys that are trying to better themselves. Yeah. So whether it's non-religious, non-denominational, what would you call, like, it's non-political, it's just about like, feeling better, looking better, doing better, how to spend more time with your family, self-improvement, self-help, that kind of thing. It sounds a little frou-frou, but it's not. It's just guys helping guys. And so one of the challenges that we had was to go out and do something nice for somebody for no other reason than just to do it.
Yeah.
And it could be something as simple as holding a door open for somebody, or
isn't that normal?
Well, exactly. Or something as grandiose as, picking up somebody's tab at the restaurant, or, there's a car broken down on the side of the road, pull over and help them change their tire, something like, just do.
Isn't that normal too?
Well, again, but I think a lot of people forget these very basic human interactions, like help each other. Like it's really hard, I think, in modern times, especially in a big city like Calgary. Everybody's hustling and bustling and doing your own thing. You just get the blinders on and you go about your thing. So anyway, long story short, I decided to go out and I'm like, I'm going to do something nice for somebody. This was like 2 weeks ago. And the very first thing I thought, I happened to go into Tim Hortons. I was grabbing a coffee and I wanted to hold the door open for somebody. And I normally do anyway, but I don't know why. It was just like, oh, I could do this. So I opened the door and it happened to be a lady probably in her late 30s, maybe early 40s, with a "may I speak to the manager" haircut. She cussed me out because I held the door open for her. Because I was a man and she was a woman, and how dare you think that because I'm a woman I need you to hold the door open for me, blah 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 blah. And I was like, I was just being polite. I would have opened the door for anybody. Well, you shouldn't assume, and Bob and all. I was like, okay, sorry. So fail.
That's I don't think that's your fail though. I think that's really, number one, she's got such a huge chip on her shoulder by the sounds of things that she needs to tone it down a little bit. And, I understand that our demographic being the Dudecast, probably not a lot of women watching this, or listening to this, that they might not comment. But, when I hold a door open for somebody, it's not because you're a woman. It's not because you're necessarily old or you're anything. It's just you're the person behind me, and typically I do that and I'll allow you to go first. It doesn't matter who you necessarily are. It's just a general courtesy thing. I don't think that, because you're a woman, I'm necessarily going to hold the door open for you. If you're 50 yards away and I hold it open and I wait like a minute, then okay, maybe you know,
right.
Then maybe I'm assuming something, and then maybe you can cuss me out. But if you're right behind me, no. I mean, and people need to chill. You know, it's like,
yeah, absolutely.
Just accept there's too many people in this world, you know, that are just going about their business, and they'll run you over before they'll help you out.
100%.
You know, and the fact that somebody's taking the time to help you out or open a door or be courteous, I think you should accept that quite
with
openly.
a smile.
Yeah.
And just say thank you.
And even if you don't necessarily like it, just go on with it, because I mean, it's just positivity, you know.
Well, and this is it. So I looked at that experiment and I thought, okay, well, this didn't go very well. So then I thought, okay, well, maybe I can just try again or do something else. Because again, it was the same day, and it was this mindset of go do something nice and kind of report back how it went. So it gets worse, actually. So I think one of the biggest sticking points or frustration points for a lot of people living in cities, especially commuting back and forth to work, is traffic. And I think one of the biggest areas people can be more courteous is allowing other drivers to merge, slowing down, giving people more time. Again, driving slowly, trying to make sure I'm giving lots of room on either side, looking whatever else. I was flipped off 3 times in a row.
Nice.
For letting people merge in front of me or whatever. The one guy actually cut me off and then flipped me off. And I'm like, what? But I was very weird. And I don't know if it's just the time of year. Maybe it's the season. I mean, we're going through major wildfires right now, although at the time there was no wildfire smoke in Calgary. So I don't think that was it. I don't know. Maybe I just have a face people don't like.
I don't know, man. It's interesting. Traffic is definitely interesting, you know, and I think that people feel, number one, very safe in their car.
Yep.
And I think sometimes that they feel that, you know, you can flip somebody off and there's no repercussions for that, and makes you just that little bit more douchey.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny, you know, this is quite some time ago. I happened to be going, you know, to the video store. That'll explain how old.
So this is a while ago.
This is a while ago.
Yeah.
But there was a 4-way stop. I pulled up to the stopped, and then I went to go, and then Buddy just blew his stop sign, turned left, almost took off the front end of my car. At the time, I honked because, you know,
hey,
it was
look
like,
out.
whoa,
Yeah.
you know, like this was out of nowhere, and he flipped me off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're an asshole. The funny thing is that where I was going, because of the side of the road that I was on, I had turned left and then turned left into the parking lot. He was turning left to turn right into the parking lot. We were going to the same place.
Fantastic.
The video store. So we both got out, and I got out there, and I was standing there, and you could see at that moment that there was some regret in his actions. Number one, because I think, you know, he probably is like, this guy's probably a little bigger than I thought that he was, and now he's standing where I'm going.
Great.
You know, and all I said to him is like, you know, was it worth it? You know, was it worth being that upset about it? Like, really, in reality, like, and he's like, well, you don't beat me up. Don't beat me up. I'm like, I'm not going to beat you up, you know, but
ridiculous.
Just so you know, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, why would you flip me off? You ran a stop sign. I did nothing wrong. I was honking to avoid a collision because I was scared you were going to run into me, and that you know, that you were completely unaware. And he's like, oh, I'm just sorry. I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. You know, people feel that they can do stuff like that, and there's going to be zero repercussions.
Yeah.
If I was a different person, that could have ended in a much
very
different
differently
way, you know, and you always hear about road rage incidents.
Yep.
You know, and I get it. People's, you know, frustrations will boil, and you get to a stoplight, and I'm sure that there's, you know, cases where it kind of goes over the top.
Well, you know, and if you live in Texas where it's open carry.
Oh, yeah. It's,
you know, you get your ass shot off.
Yeah, it's not worth it. It's really, really.
No, absolutely not. Not
worth it, you know, and I understand that, you know, driving can be frustrating, and especially in a city like this that's busy and gets backed up, and, you know, people aren't courteous anymore. And, you know, if we look at your story, even when you are, you know, very not receptive to it, you know, I don't understand, you know, for me is how we kind of got to this point. Like, why did we get to this point? Has the internet made us, feel so secure in our little space that we can say anything and do anything that we want without any real kind of repercussions, that we can just kind of go out and do that.
Could be. I wonder if it's the internet per se, or if it's just mass media in general. The way things are going, it's, that progression, because everybody kind of always looks back and goes, oh, the 50s was such a better time, or oh, the 60s was such a better time, or whatever. And you kind of think, well, was it really? I mean, there was some tough economic times. There was, there was war, there was Cold War, there was all these other things going on. But by and large, from, my parents, my aunts and uncles, when they were talking, people generally were a little bit more courteous. Things were slower. Cars didn't go as fast. There was no instantaneous communication, and I think that's part of it. I think it's just speed. Yeah. People are used to go, now, me.
Right.
And I wonder if that plays more into it than anything else. It's just that focus of,
well, if you look at politics and political opinion, right?
Right.
I mean, there's that adage where you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics, and you'll get along royally, right?
Sure, of course, yeah.
And a lot of times I would say, in the past, that you wouldn't really talk a whole bunch about that, or what you would say would be, unless you were at a debate,
right.
in a political organization, you were kind of not really kind of go as far as people do, let's say, on, platforms like Facebook with political opinion.
For sure.
Because there's the opportunity to get punched right in the mouth.
Absolutely.
Well, or come to blows. And when you're face to face, it is a different. Things can escalate. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
If you look at how things escalate on Facebook, a lot of times, if you were to, transplant those people and have that conversation roll out the way that it did, I could see a lot of these times, it resulting in blows. And I think the internet has kind of insulated us from that direct interaction where, number one, maybe you don't even know that you're hurting a person, right?
Right.
Because you don't get the facial expressions, you're just seeing words, but maybe you're honestly, hurting somebody's feelings, or really kind of, getting them worked up. And, at a certain point, if I see you're getting upset,
you might stop.
Right? I might back off, right?
Yeah.
I might go, you would hope, right? Well, I might choose to go and escalate it, and that's what I mean. Like, at that point, then it's like, okay, Nick punched me in the head, and, I probably deserved it, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm an ass,
Sure, yeah.
I think we've lost, kind of some of that, contextual stuff of being in person, and the fact that the internet allows us to communicate every day. People millions of miles away, and not necessarily good communication isn't always a good thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, it's funny. The internet is so new still. It's funny to say it because it's now been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
25 years. But it's still really, really new in the grand history of, mankind. It's a baby little thing that we're still trying to get used to, still trying to navigate, still trying to wrap our heads around of, like, how is it changing our lives? How is it changing our attitudes? How is it changing our interactions? And I hope that it will get better.
I would hope so too.
I feel like it's over the past 5 or 6 years, it's sort of accelerated and declined a lot of things.
I think the internet does a lot of good things, and it does, some amazing things for people. I think that what's happened is with the political climate, and because political parties have decided to be very polarizing at this point, and try to polarize people as well, that has created a huge issue. If you look at U.S. politics, if you look more recently at Alberta politics, if, come November, if you look at Canadian politics, it's going to be very divisive. That's just what's going to happen. Like, mark my words at this point, when the federal election comes around, there's going to be a lot of upset people, and there's going to be a lot of ranting on Facebook.
Yeah. I'm so glad I'm not on it anymore. It's made my life so much richer.
Yeah.
So not all bad though, to kind of cap that off then and zip back around. So later in the day, I ended up finding somebody that I could do something nice for. And I don't know if this is a little cliched, but there was a either homeless or maybe slightly homeless or bum type person on the side of the street, kind of hanging out asking for change. And I don't usually I never carry cash. I have my debit card or my credit card, and that's it. And it was one of those, hey buddy, do you have any change? And I'm like, no, sorry man, I don't have any change. And of course I think to myself, I'm like, I'm supposed to do something nice for somebody today. I'm like, so I just looked at him. I was like, so what's going on? And we ended up having a conversation for about 5 or 10 minutes. And he kind of told me a little bit about his life story and his family situation. And he was married. He's got a couple kids, lost his job, lost his house. Alberta, typical kind of Alberta, really horrible story because of the crash in the economy and whatever else. Anyway, so he's lost all that and he's kind of living on the streets. He's at one of the shelters and kind of bounces around this and whatever else. And so I said, so, what are you going to use the money for? And I mean, and I told him, I was like, listen, this isn't really any of my business. Like, if I'm just going to give you some money, then you can go and do whatever you want with it. I said, but I don't have cash, but I do have some time. I'm kind of enjoying our conversation. Can I buy you lunch, or do you just want a bottle of booze? Like, what, whatever. And he was like, actually, I would love some lunch. So we went and ate lunch together, and nice. We continued chatting and whatever. I bought him a McHappy meal or whatever it was that he ate. It was McDonald's. I gave him the choice because we were down on 17 Ave, so there's a couple restaurants to choose from or whatever. And so we sat and had lunch together and chatted and whatever. And I mean, did it help him overall? Who knows? I don't know. But I felt good about doing that, and I think he felt good because he had something to eat. Yeah. So it kind of turned the day around for me. Anyway, that was that.
I think people should do that on the norm. Like I said, I mean, opening doors for people, if somebody's in distress, trying to help them out. I mean, for me, those are normal things. Those are things that I'll stop 100%. And do. And I mean, when I worked at the tattoo studio, a lot of times I would stop at McDonald's. I would buy the, Egg McMuffins 2 for $5 if they were on sale. And there were guys that were, sort of kicking around in that area because I used to work in Forest Lawn. Yep. And, I would just hand out a couple sandwiches. I would never give them money, but I would, I would give them food, Sure. And it wasn't an always thing, and they were always appreciative of it. And, it was just kind of like, hey, here you go. And
and anybody just taking that time, I think, to do something nice for somebody, even if it's a little thing. I think the thing that I learned about that specific interaction was it wasn't actually even so much the food. I think it was more my time of him having a chance to kind of tell his story to somebody and have somebody that actually was interested in listening. And it was humbling for me for him to actually open up and tell me this. Who the hell am I? I'm just some strange dude, whatever. And I've never seen him since and whatever. So I wish him well, but it was a good, I think the capacity for people for kindness and sharing and actual human connection is still there if you can strip away all the other bullshit. Yeah. And I think that's the takeaway.
Yeah. And, the conversation part that you mentioned of is probably the bigger thing. Because a lot of times when you are homeless or if you're, panhandling, is that you get ignored something fierce. Like people just, put the blinders on. They won't even make eye contact. So, I mean, that's got to be kind of a weird situation to be in. I know there's a couple guys, that they're around, the area that I live in, and they're often at places that I go to. And, I talk to them sometimes, like there's one guy that in particular, he collects cans and, that's what he does. And then he'll, go get his food that way. I'll give him cans,
Sure.
For me, it's like, you're not, robbing houses or whatever. I mean, he may have some addiction issues. Well, in fact, I know he's got some addiction issues, but he is conscientiously doing, work. Right. Just like anybody else.
As best he can.
As best he can.
For sure.
To do his thing, and he, stays out of people. And I just have conversation with him, and he's, he's always happy to see me, and he'll say hi, and it may just be a brief interaction, but I think he feels, at least I'm not invisible, right?
Yeah. Valued as a human being.
Yeah.
Right?
And he's a good guy. He's just, again, down on his luck. And but, even in having conversations with him over the past couple years, he went from, being homeless on the street to, having a small place and a cat. And, that's a big improvement.
That's a huge improvement. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, there you go.
There you go.
That's it. So there you go. Episode 1 of season 2 in the can.
All right.
Well, I'm looking forward to a whole bunch more of these.
Absolutely.
And thank you for joining us on iTunes or Spotify or Pocket Casts or Rocket Casts, Anchor FM, and all the other places where you can find the Dudecast. I've been Nick.
I'm JD.
We'll see you soon.
See ya.